Rise, man.
The Force will be with you.
What about the droid attack on the Wookiees?
So I just finished watching Chapter 13 of The Mandalorian, Season 2, Episode 5, the big one that we've all been waiting for. So as always in this video, I'm going to give you my spoiler-free review first, and then I'm going to do a full breakdown with Easter eggs, things you may have missed, including the ending explained. I will make clear though that this particular episode goes very deep into explanations and what we can expect next. You'll be given a 10-second warning before I go into full spoiler mode, and that should give you plenty of time to click away from the video if you do not want to be spoiled because you haven't seen the episode yet. After the breakdown, I'm going to speak generally about the episode, what we can hope for next week, and I'll give my closing remarks and final thoughts. So without too much further ado, and without any more jibber jabber, let's get into it. Starting with my spoiler-free review, this episode blew me away. I think a lot of us had very high expectations going into it, and I must say that they did not only meet those expectations, but even exceeded them, and threw us some curveballs that we didn't see coming. The pacing was on point for me, and it had the right balance of action sequences and slow moments, whereas fans we could really take in what was happening, and breathe for a bit between the fast-paced moments. Writing-wise, this one gets the award for the best written Mandalorian episode in my personal opinion. There was so much fan service, callbacks and deep cut references, but they struck the perfect equilibrium for not isolating new fans either. They were able to balance it just right that the story of The Mandalorian as a show was able to advance while also giving die-hard fans something tangible, enjoyable, and more than any of that, mind-blowing. I hate to say this, but I can't help but think that if this level of nuanced writing was present in the franchise in the sequel era, we probably would have had a much better sequel trilogy. Now listen, I'm not trying to hate at all, I don't like toxicity, but I cannot help but emphasize just how spot on the writing was for this episode, and it's all thanks to our Lord and Saviour, Dave Filoni, who not only delivered a great episode but went beyond what we could have hoped for. He truly understands Star Wars, and you can feel his passion gleaming through, not only as a talented director and writer, but as a fan of the franchise we all love so much. Okay guys, so that was my spoiler-free review, and now you have 10 seconds to turn away because I'm about to get into the full episode breakdown with Easter eggs. We start the episode on Calodan on the forest planet of Corvus. It's dark and gloomy, and we see fighters who are the guards of Calodan who have set their sights on Ahsoka. This episode wastes no time whatsoever and was straight into the action sequence. She appears in the flesh in a dark forest. It really took me back. I didn't expect her to appear so suddenly. In last week's prediction video, I did say she would appear right at the start, and I was right on this occasion. She appears with her two white lightsabers. She's cloaked and she fights them off. There's immediately a clear division between the town and Ahsoka. They do not like each other, and the reasons become more and more apparent as the episode goes on. The town's magistrate, who is called Morgan Elsbeth, and Captain Lang, her senior captain, are presiding over the attack. They want her out of Calodan. Once Ahsoka Tano is victorious, Morgan Elsbeth, the magistrate, shouts, "Show yourself, Jedi." Ahsoka clearly wants to know something and says, "Tell me," but this is not specified at this point in the episode. We then go to the title screen, and it is revealed, as reported and rumoured over the last week, that this episode is titled The Jedi. We then see Mando and Baby Yoda headed to Corvus. Baby Yoda loves the gear shift, or the top of the gear shift at least, and he wants to touch it, but Mando tells him to stay in his seat, and so Baby Yoda instead gets it by using the Force. Once they arrive on Corvus, Mando and Baby Yoda head into Calodan to try and find Ahsoka Tano. Mando is confronted at the gate of Calodan and is asked to state his business. Once he is granted access, he enters the gates. He tries to speak to some of the locals, but it's evident that they are being silenced. Guards suddenly appear behind Mando, and they tell him that the magistrate wants to speak with him. As they're walking past, we see prisoners who are tied up to electrocution units, and one of them says, "Help us." The magistrate tells Mando that she has a proposition for him. She wants him to kill Ahsoka because, quote-unquote, the Jedi plagues her. Since he replies his price is very high, she offers him a pure Beskar spear. I'm not too sure if this is the Mandalorian spear, which is called the Bevy Rager, which was very valuable as an asset to Mandalorians. It could very well be because Mando seemed very impressed by it, but it's more the fact that it was made of pure Beskar, and that is worth a lot in these post-Imperial times. When Mando is led back out of town, he wanders through the forest and Ahsoka appears and attacks him. A fight ensues and he ropes her. Once she escapes his grip, before she attacks him back, Mando stops her by stating that Bo-Katan Kryze sent him. She is more interested though in the child. Later that night, she uses the Force to connect with the child. She wants to know who he is and where he's from, and she finds out that his name is Grogu. This proves that the leaks were actually correct, so now we have a name for the child, Grogu. Ahsoka Tano then reveals Grogu's backstory. He was raised at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. Many masters trained him over the years. At the end of the Clone Wars, he was taken from the temple and hidden as the Empire rose to power. The big question is, though, who hid him? There are indeed clues later on, so let's come back to this at a different point. Ahsoka then says that his memory becomes dark after this. We then get a big reference because Ahsoka reveals that she's only ever known one other being like this, Jedi Master Yoda, who she calls one of the wisest Jedi she's ever met. We then hear Yoda's theme briefly playing in the background, but this is very subtle. So Mando tells Ahsoka that he was tasked to bring the child to the Jedi and that he needs her help. She says she'll test Grogu in the morning. So the following morning, Ahsoka Tano tests Grogu, and it turns out that he's full of fear. They do a little test with a stone and she pushes it using the Force, hoping that he'll reciprocate, but he doesn't. She notices that there is a strong attachment with Grogu to Mando, and the only way that Grogu responds is when he uses the tip of the gear shift. With that, he did use the Force when asked by Djarin after 2 times. Since Grogu has an attachment, Ahsoka refuses to train him because attachment makes him susceptible to fear, and as we all know from the prequels, to be a Jedi you can have no attachments. One of the reasons Anakin turned to the dark side in the first place, and she even references Anakin Skywalker here. She says, "I've seen what it can do to the best of us." This is also very reminiscent of the scene in Rebels when Ahsoka speaks to Ezra about her master. Mando is a little bit desperate, and so to entice her, he reveals that he was sent by the Magistrate to kill her. He said that he didn't agree to anything, but if she agrees to train Grogu, he will help her with her quote-unquote problem. The two team up and Ahsoka explains who the Magistrate is. We get her name, which is Morgan Elsbeth. During the Clone Wars, her people were massacred and she survived to let anger fuel an industry that helped build the Imperial Starfleet. They're slowly hinting at who she works for. Mando and Ahsoka team up to help free the village and to overthrow the Magistrate. At this point, we see an awesome action sequence in the early hours of the next morning, whereby Ahsoka destroys guards with her lightsaber and shows her true power as a matured Force user at this point in the timeline. Once inside Calodan, the Magistrate faces off with Ahsoka, and we find out what it is Ahsoka wanted to know at the start of the episode. She wants to know where the Magistrate's master is. At this point in my head, I had a very clear idea that it would be Grand Admiral Thrawn, which does turn out to be the case, but let's go with the pacing of this episode. The guards then open fire on Ahsoka, but she escapes. Mando jumps into action before the guards can kill the prisoners, and he kills the guards instead. In the town's alleyways, the guards are scanning the premises, and Ahsoka appears behind 2 guards in a really cool way. She ignites her white lightsabers and kills them. We see some really cool guard droids, and I'm not too sure of the exact model, and if you guys know, let me know in the comments down below, but at first glance I thought they were the DP6 guard droids that we see in the Old Republic. I thought that was a callback to them. They look very similar, but I don't think they're the exact model. So after defeating all of these droids and guards, Ahsoka confronts the Magistrate herself in her garden. They fight, and eventually Ahsoka finds herself with her saber up to the Magistrate's throat. She says, "Now tell me," referring to wanting to know the location of her master. She name drops Grand Admiral Thrawn, the master of the Magistrate. We now have enough clues to piece together why Ahsoka wants to know where Grand Admiral Thrawn is. If she can locate Thrawn, she can locate Ezra Bridger, who she and Sabine Wren went looking for at the end of Rebels. While this specific episode of Mando does not give any indication of where Sabine Wren might be, it's clear that their quest to find Ezra was never completed. On the subject of Grand Admiral Thrawn, if you're not familiar with Rebels, In the show, Ezra Bridger and other rebels confronted Thrawn to liberate Lothal once and for all. They were both pulled into hyperspace, never to be seen again. But here we can assume that Ahsoka got the information she needs to find him, or the Magistrate didn't reveal anything to Ahsoka and she was killed. The former is more likely to be true, and then the Magistrate was killed after revealing the information though. I can see them driving the story forward that way. I'm not personally too sure if they'll leave this story arc open-ended until Ahsoka's own spin-off show happens, or whether they'll come back to this story later in the season or in season 3 or even season 4 of Mando. But I think it's safe to assume for now this story is staying put, and we now have a premise for where Ahsoka Tano's character goes from here. The next morning on Calodan, they are all celebrating their freedom as Ahsoka and Mando exit the gates. She gives Mando the spear. Mando goes to get Grogu in order to hand him over to this Jedi. As Grogu is sleeping, Mando wakes him and says it's time to say goodbye. This was a very heartwarming moment, and I felt a little bit sad because I wasn't sure if he was actually going to be handed over. But Ahsoka appears at the Razor Crest entrance and rightly says you're like a father to him and that she can't train him. Ahsoka says that there is another possibility though. This was another big name drop. She tells him to go to the planet of Tython. There they'll find the ancient ruins of a Jedi Temple. Grogu will be placed on the Seeing Stone at the top of the mountain, where he will be able to choose his own path. She says if he reaches out through the Force, another Jedi may sense his presence and come searching for him, even though there aren't too many Jedi left. So the big question is, are they setting up the appearance of another huge character that we already know? I think this is exactly the direction they'll want to go in, and my predictions is that we're either going to get Luke Skywalker, Ezra Bridger, or even perhaps Mace Windu. She says, "May the Force be with you," and it cuts to black, and then it says directed by Dave Filoni, and we have the end credits. Now, something I want to mention is the planet of Tython. It was a planet in the Tython system of the Deep Core that played an important role in the histories of the Jedi Order before it became the Jedi Order. So it's a very ancient temple, and we're going right to the roots of the Jedi themselves. I'm going to make an entire video about the planet Tython tomorrow, so do check out my channel if you're brand new tomorrow, where you will get a full explanation of that planet. So that was chapter 13, guys, and as I said at the start, it did not disappoint in the slightest. It's probably my favourite Mandalorian episode so far of this season, and perhaps even ever. Going forward, evidently, I think Mando and the child are now headed to Tython because Mando has not yet completed his quest because this Jedi did not want to train Grogu because of his attachments. So I'm predicting that the next episode is going to be a transitional episode. We might see the armor again, or he might go to Navarro, and then I think further on he will be chased down by Moff Gideon and head to Tython. So let me know what you guys thought of this episode down below in the comments. I'm Star Wars Meg, wishing you a phenomenal rest of the day, no matter where you dwell in the galaxy. Have a good one.